My name is Elena Krasnow. Welcome to Press Play, the StreetCred Podcast. I'm so grateful you're here. I'm the marketing manager at StreetCred PR and your host for today's show, along with co-host and managing partner Jimmy Moock. We will break down the show into two segments: Press, where we dive into all the hard news about our guests' life and their professional goals, and then Play, where we have a little extra fun with it. Today, Jimmy and I are so excited to welcome the unstoppable Joanne Bradford to the show. To give our listeners a little more background on Joanne, Joanne is an experienced operating executive with a demonstrated track record of helping build companies at every level, from startups to Fortune 50 enterprises. She is currently the Chief Money Officer at Domain Money, where she exercises her passion for simplifying financial planning and empowering people to achieve their goals. Joanne's rich technology background includes pivotal executive roles such as President of Honey, COO of SoFi, Chief Revenue Officer at Microsoft, and Head of Partnerships at Pinterest, just to name a few, contributing to over 20 billion in total value creation. She also serves as a strategic advisor to the Female Quotient, focusing on the business of equality, and has been a strong advocate for women in business for decades. Additionally, she is on the boards of Kahoot, Q Health, and Super. She also maintains her own advisory practice, J. Brad Advisors, which works with elite CEOs and executives to scale high growth companies and launch new offerings. Joanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. I'm such a Street Cred fan. You guys do amazing work with amazing companies. So I'm thrilled to be here.
It's easy when we have people like you in our orbit. Thanks so much for being here for episode 22,
Sure,
Joanne.
sure.
Yes, I kind of love that it's episode 22 also. I've been kind of into angel numbers lately, which is, I know, is a little woo, but 22 is a good number.
It is a good number, and congrats. That means you're past the, like, you're gonna not do it anymore. You're doing it forever.
That's right. I'm locked into this for the rest of my life every month. And honestly, it's been so much fun. And we've been talking about having you on the pod and what a dream that would be since the inception of this project. So know that this is a monumental moment for us. But before we dive into all the questions we have for you, we start off every single podcast with the same incredibly important question, which is, what did you have for lunch today?
I am on a very big chicken salad kick.
Mm.
Sort of inspired by, the TikTok craziness of Bethany Frankel. And if follow her and the chicken salad craze, she really goes around and tastes all the chicken salad. And I happen to have a deli in the high-end grocery store by my house that makes an excellent chicken salad. So that's what I'm into right now, little chicken salad.
So, the next time you were in Yardley, Pennsylvania, which might be the first time you're ever in Yardley, Pennsylvania, I got to bring you to Bagel Train, which, in my humble opinion, I am not Bethany Frankel, nor am I Matthew McConaughey and his tuna salad videos and approach to lunch. But Nancy at Bagel Train, and this is a free advertisement for her, obviously, for
All
all of
right.
our 30 listeners,
Not an ad.
makes the best chicken salad. So we'll have to figure out how to have a bicontinental
Yeah.
chicken salad standoff.
Well, I mean, that's what she does all the time. And so, there's a whole discussion about like the quality of the chicken. Is the
Mm.
chicken pureed? Is it still chunky? What else you put in it? And so, I don't know why I sort of like that whole, thing. And then I always make like a weird TikTok recipe at least once a week. And the last one I made was the roll up lasagna, and it was a fail. Too much ricotta in it. Really, it takes balance in life. And you can't always follow the TikTokers. And then I made the cottage cheese bagel too,
Oh,
which was pretty good, I would give that a plus. But I fall for the TikTok, you know, shenanigans.
I just sent my boyfriend a video from TikTok of cottage cheese that you put in the oven like flat and turn it
Yeah.
into a bread basically, and then you
Yeah.
put a Caesar in the middle.
Yeah.
So similarly, I am falling
Yeah.
for these tactics and trends.
There you go. So
Awesome. Well, we have a ton we want to talk about with you today, Joanne. You have one of the most impressive and interesting backgrounds of anyone I've ever met in the industry. Can you take us back to the beginning and tell us a little bit about your career journey and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, I was a terrible student. I almost flunked out of high school and college. And I went to junior college and transferred to San Diego State. And when I got there, I was a journalism major because it was the easiest major to get into. And I went to work at the college newspaper, and on one side of the hall, they had writers. And I went in there and they weren't paying them anything. And then I went to the other side of the hall and there were people that would sell ads. And they said, "Hey, we pay." And I said, "Okay, I'm definitely going over there."
Mm,
And so I ran my college newspaper at San Diego State. Back in the day, we were doing $800,000 of revenue a year at a college newspaper. We would
wow.
30,000 newspapers a day. One of the funnest things I did was I started to put color in the newspaper ads, and we bartered for that. So I took a limo everywhere I went in college and pizza because we got those for free. So that was sort of my trademark. It was very fun. And I stayed in college an extra year because I was
Couldn't give up the free limo ride.
no, I couldn't give up the job at the newspaper. I actually made more money at that job than I made in my first job.
Wow.
And I've sort of just got bit. I was an advertising journalism major, and I just really loved sort of the power of marketing and advertising. And everything from making the ads, we used to like roll it through the waxer and cut it up with the X-Acto knife and lay the copy out,
Wow.
to like doing deals. And I hired 25 account executives every year. And it's not that different than what I did at Microsoft or did at Pinterest, where it was like, hey, organize a team, go out and come up with an idea about something that you want to take to market. So then I went to work at McGraw-Hill. I worked at Business Week magazine. They gave me a little territory. I was a little trainee. I had an Ann Taylor suit and a briefcase. And
Heck
they
yes.
said, "Can you go to Silicon Valley and call on these companies?" And so I went and called on companies like Cisco and Hewlett Packard, and sold them ads. And they were like, "You have to go up to Seattle and call on this company called Microsoft." And so I called on them when they were very, very small. And it was SQL Server, right? And DOS. And so I sold ads, and I did that for a long time. And in 2001, Business Week was doing $450 million of revenue, and the magazine was coming apart because there were so many ads in it. The staple couldn't hold it together. And I convinced them that we should put some of it online and got them to buy a URL. And it was crazy and fun, and do conferences like people do today. And they wanted me to move to New York to become the publisher of Business Week in 2001. And 9/11 happened, and my husband and I looked at each other and said, "We like California." And
Yeah.
so I said, "I need to go work at a tech company." And so I begged and borrowed my way into Microsoft and got a job there running their ad business. Nobody wanted to do that job. It was, the internet had crashed. So I went in there and built it from sort of nothing to, over the course of 6.5 years, to $2.5 billion of revenue, and hired people all over the world and traveled the world, and did all sorts of crazy things, from Live Earth, a concert, to prove that people would stream music, to created the first keyword ads. So it was really fun. It was fun, fun time. I feel very lucky that I had such a great career, like in, sales, marketing, doing all those things.
Really impressive about what you were
Totally.
doing while still on campus. Forget about
Drinking and eating, Jimmy.
well, yes, but free limos, free pizza,
Yeah.
all due to the approach you took to bartering and ultimately selling these ads. And what was it, $800,000 a year in
800, our
revenue?
annual revenue was $800,000. It was profitable.
Amazing. When Jimmy was just getting started off, in his PR days, I remember Business Week and how thick it was, along with some of your competitors at the time that might have been more focused on technology.
Yep. The
Business
industry
2,
standard.
Business 2.0, Industry Standard, Red Herring.
Yep.
And it was amazing. Like each month, it seems like they got thicker and thicker, and almost to the point where they looked like a phone book.
Yeah. We had more pages at Business Week magazine in 2000 than Bride magazine.
Wow.
Wow.
6,666, Elena.
Wow.
Is that
That
an
is,
angel number?
we're gonna call it one. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, your background is so cool. And I love this like blast from the past history too of you in college. I can just envision it perfectly. And you had a stint at the San Francisco Chronicle also, right? Or am I imagining that?
Yes, I did. I did. So I sold advertising and worked in the internet forever. I worked at Microsoft and then I went to a little startup. I didn't really know what a venture-backed startup was, and I went and I picked a really bad one. So after 6 months, I went to Yahoo because I knew them from when we were trying to buy Yahoo at Microsoft. Spent a couple of years at Yahoo. And then I took a company public called Demand Media, which was the original sort of, they called it a content farm back then, but it was really creating content based on machine learning and what people were Google searching for. It was sort of, we would have called it AI today, but,
Yeah.
it was, we would, make articles on, how to make a smoky eye. Nobody had that article. How to make a strawberry smoothie. How to write a check, how to set up your 401k.
Yeah.
And we went public in 2010, and we were the first $1 billion plus IPO. It was a rocking success. And then Google changed the algorithm, and we sort of got hit on that. So
Mm.
many companies are today. So I'm like, it's a repeat. But Google has a lot of power and they don't really care about the, companies going public. So I spent 4 years there. And after the 4 years there, we built things like eHow, Livestrong. We built a model site for Tyra Banks, a
Oh
cooking
my
site
gosh.
for
Cool.
Rachel Ray.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll tell you the stories about that another time. But we did that, and then I was like, look, I just can't travel anymore. All these jobs I traveled with, and so I said, look, I really wanted to reinvent the San Francisco Chronicle. I thought it should have been like the New York Times, and I was working with Kara Swisher at that point in time, and I was her independent board member, and I helped her raise her money and leave the Journal and start Recode. And so I wrote a strategy to buy Recode, to really have the San Francisco Chronicle be focused on sports, news, lifestyle, philanthropy, tech. And it turned out that Hearst was a little not that focused on it because it was in the newspaper division. And so they were sort of like, man, we don't know if we really want you to do that. And so Pinterest called, and Pinterest was sort of a dream company for me. And said, hey, can you come in and build our monetization strategy? So I went to Pinterest and spent a few years there selling the first pins, proving how Pinterest worked, traveling around the world, teaching people about Pinterest.
Wow.
And so that was super fun. So I spent a few years there. And then that's when I just said, okay, I can never sell another ad as long as I live. And I need to go learn something new. And so I left Pinterest and I was like, look, I'm going to go work in a new industry. And at that point in time, a friend of mine had called me and said, hey, I work at a little company called SoFi.
Oh my
And
gosh.
SoFi had like 75 employees. And so I went and met the founder of SoFi. He was a hedge fund guy. And he said, look, I have this idea, and I would like this company to be the best digital bank for millennials. And my vision is that it's a $30 billion company someday. and I want to build a brand to do that, and I have no idea how. Could you do that? And I said, I don't know if I could do it. And he's like, well, I think you can. Let's try. And I didn't really care because it was a different industry, and I was so well known in the ad business that I was like, financial services, if I fail at it, nobody cares. But if I do well at it, it will be interesting.
Totally.
So I built the SoFi brand, and the experience, and launched new products. We took the company from, like, $500 million valuation to almost a $6 billion valuation. When I left, we were doing $30 billion of annual loans. We had launched a credit card, a money management card, an investment product. We had, done, almost 20 securitizations into the market. And it was wild, wild times. But it was really fun. And I learned everything you could about financial services, like literally sitting at my desk, Googling next to the capital market team, like, what does that mean? And I realized
Relatable.
that, people in the financial services sector like to speak a language that nobody else understands because it keeps them away. And once I got over that, then I figured I could figure it out. And then I would just talk ad talk. So then they would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. But it was fun. And so we did all sorts of crazy things there. We made a wild bet one time. We made a little Super Bowl ad, and we ran it in the overtime of the Patriots Falcon game. And a Super Bowl game has not gone into overtime. And so I was like, look, if the ad goes into overtime, I'll pay you $1 million to run this ad. We didn't think it would happen. And we were just using it as a negotiation tactic to buy some other stuff with Fox TV at the time. And the game went into overtime and our ad ran. And so
Oh
it
my
was one of
gosh.
the really fun moments. And it cost us $10,000 to make the ad. And it was as good as our ad that we made the year before that sort of sucked. So for $10,000, we got better results than we did the year before for, millions. So it was we did crazy stuff like that. Like, it was fun.
So, got to go back almost to the beginning.
What?
Kara Swisher. My
Yeah.
God, when I was an account executive in New York City, working in the tech industry, she was the apex in terms of getting your client in front of her or
Yep.
Walt Mossberger.
Yep.
I mean, those were scores. And he was involved with Recode too,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Walt.
So you're hanging out with two of them as if it's nothing, whereas there's a guy like me fiddling away at his computer, figuring out how to get Panasonic rechargeable batteries or the latest in graphical user interfaces, layered over chat agents like AOL Instant Messenger in front of them. And that was tough.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Hey, Microsoft, we used to, one of the most important things we did when we made a product, we said, what would the Walt Mossberg review of the product be?
Yes.
And we would reverse engineer to build the product from what he would write about it. And so, I met Kara and Walt when I was at Microsoft. There was a big feature written on me in the Wall Street Journal in maybe 2006 or 7. It was an A1 profile about my brashness at Microsoft. And so I was well known by all of them, and I'd been building the ad business. And Kara used to try to call me to get scoop all the time on Microsoft. And I was just like, no, I'm not going to give you the scoop. And then she lives in San Francisco, close to my house, so we would just hang out. And we would always talk about, like, hey, what should happen? How do you think about the business? What's going forward? So we literally put together a deck one day, showed it to Walt, and then we went and raised some money, and they left the journal. I actually have a picture of us hitting the go live site. on New Year's Eve, and I can't remember what year it was, of her and Walt and me hitting the button to put the site live. And it was
Amazing.
it was really amazing. I still remember being at Recode with Kara, and she was like, you know what? I think I'm not going to write that much anymore. I think I'm going to talk, and I think I'm going to do just like talks on, on like radio internet, and it was sort of pre-podcast, and look at her now. So, quite amazing. I mean, she's really been an independent thinker and also has worked at a lot of places, but in the end remains true to herself. Uh,
Hmm.
and so, in driving forward, and I think there's such a place for that in business. She actually just texted me yesterday about someone. She's like, why did this happen? And I'm like, well, they want creative control and they don't want to work for a boss. And she's like, isn't that what we all want?
Yeah,
And so, I think that's sort of a big theme in the world now, is that you can be your own boss. And when I was coming up, companies really invested in you and they trained you and they taught you a ton. I learned so much, and then I was, recruited into the McGraw-Hill management program. Not because of my outstanding grades, but because my grandmother was a receptionist. So yes, I am a Nepo baby. I think it's really, really important that we recognize today that people don't get as much training as they did in the big companies, the GEs, the Microsofts, the McGraw-Hills. Those management training programs don't really exist. So people have to rely on podcasts and the internet,
hmm
the proliferation of small company and technology. So, I'm empathetic towards anybody out there like having to train and make their own way. I think that, StreetCred, you do a great job with your team doing things like this. But
hmm
it's hard to have career development the way that I did when I was younger.
Totally. I think that's a really on point observation for how just the industries have changed generally, and the structure in which training happens is so much different than it used to be.
Yeah.
With that thought in mind, compare it to the approach that many small businesses or even large enterprises today take in terms of failing fast, learning from it, moving on.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, look, you know, someone was asking me the other day, they just think like Pinterest was a runaway success from day one. And I was laughing because I said we launched what is considered a buyable pin, which was you could buy something right from a pin
I
in
saw that.
2013. And it just now works. Like, you got to iterate your way through it. And so,
Totally.
there are lots of things that don't work, and you get there. I'm working on a project right now, which is an AI ad project with a group of Microsoft engineers called ProRata AI, which is about how AI advertising should be a thing, and it's really not. And so they're building this product, and it's really fun to see them iterate on it and test it with publishers. And everything that's old is new again, right? Like you have to solve all these
Hmm.
problems. But the failing fast means you've got to like try it and figure it out. One of the companies that you guys work with is wealth.com, and they have a big audacious vision of taking the pain out of all legal documents and your dashboard for all your trust, estate, and money management. And when they started, they were like, oh, we're going to be this sort of DTC to everybody. And they're like, that's too big of an ocean to boil. And so they started with RIAs. And then you'll see they'll move to the next group of people. But I expect that company to be, pretty substantial and touch every segment from legal to wealth to consumer in its maturation. But you've got to start somewhere, right? And even SoFi, we started with people with student loans, and everybody was like, that's so dumb. And I was like, no, they're never going to default on their loan. If you went to Stanford, you have too much guilt. Like how bad would you feel if you went to Stanford and you
The
defaulted on
guilt
your student
alone.
loan? It's like if you went to San Diego State and you defaulted on your loan, you'd be like, it's okay. But so, and then we knew they would get more products and they would get more products and their lifetime would, their financial lifetime would be huge. And that's sort of proven itself out.
Totally. Well, this is a good actually segue to our next question, which is like just talk a little bit about your thoughts on the potential for technology to close the wealth gap and improve people's financial well-being. Wealth.com is one example of that. But I'm sure you have many thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super, super passionate about the only reason that I took the risks that I did later in life, like going to Pinterest. I went to Honey, which was a coupon code company. All my friends were like, "You're crazy. What are you going to a coupon code company for?" Well, we sold it for $4 billion to PayPal, which was a really nice exit for me at
Yeah.
a later stage in life. But I didn't start taking risks with startups until I had all my money in the bank and my kids' college was paid for and I could afford to remodel my bathroom. Like I was very earnest in it. And I really feel like a financial plan and starting young gives you a very big difference. I hope that my daughter listens to this podcast, but I doubt she will, so I can talk about her. She is in her late 20s, and I started her off when she was young. I was like, put your money in a 401k, save some money, put it in an account. And, she's, got $500,000 now. Right. I mean, and she's saved it all. She hasn't had great jobs, no offense to her, like great paying jobs. She's had great jobs, of course, but and she just understood the power of compounding, the power of a financial plan, the power of putting it away. And, she recently got laid off and she's like, look, I'm going to take a year and sort of do what I want to do. And she can because she's financially okay with that.
Yeah.
And so, and I don't think that she missed out on anything because of that, right? Like if you talk to her, she still went on vacation, she did things, she was very, very thoughtful about it. And so, like I work with Domain Money, and we built a tool that I actually worked on when I was at SoFi. It was,
Mm.
financial planning. We have this great financial planner, Katie Song. I was a Morgan Stanley client. I hated what they showed me. They were like, "Here's all your returns on your ETFs and your blah blah blah," and I was like, I'm excited about the returns. But really, what I'm more excited about is you telling me what I can afford to do or can't do. Can I quit
Hmm.
my job? Can I send my kids to college? Can I take 6 months off? Can I buy a second home? What can I do? Never did buy a second home. I don't want the responsibility. But and they wouldn't answer those questions. They would answer them like in passing. But I was like, I want an actual plan. And so Katie Song built a plan for me that I liked better than my Morgan Stanley plan. So last year, I introduced her to Domain Money and we acquired her business and her methodology. And we now offer that service on a flat fee for people. And they're so satisfied with it. We get like 10 out of 10 NPS score on it. But really, what it does is it gives people confidence to know, hey, I have a financial plan. I know where I am against my earnings. I know where I am against my life goals. And I think if you have that, no matter who you are or how much money you make, you can succeed against that. And I know like everybody writes these books, like compounding and doing these things, but doing it for you personally is really.
Hmm.
And so, I liken it to, a lot of people have a personal trainer or a therapist or, belong to the Equinox. And I'm like, why don't you have a financial plan, right? Like it's probably the most important thing you do. So I'm super, super passionate about it because I think if you have a financial plan, you can literally do anything you want in life or figure out how to get yourself in or out of any situation, from divorce to child to no child to helping your family to not helping your family. Like I just, I think laying it all out on a piece of paper and going through it with a professional is a game changer in life.
Totally.
When I first got into the industry, everything was so rooted and focused on investment management and the
Mhm.
returns that you were talking about on your statements. Yet 99.9% of us really just need to learn what is the cost of being me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And once you figure that out, to your point about you can take a vacation, you can do anything that you want to do financially, there might be the element of time that you have to wait a certain amount of time for that to happen because of saving or whatever, or there might be trade-offs that you have to
Mhm.
make. Well, I really want to go on this around the world cruise. I don't know who would ever want to go on a
Yeah.
cruise for that long. I've never even been on a boat like that, but you get the idea. You got to make trade-offs. All right, I'm not going to go buy the new BMW because I do want to travel the world with my wife.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, and people
Yeah.
end up in this situation where they don't really prioritize what they want. And that was one of the things that we found. I went through, we gave away 15 financial plans to people at SoFi. We found that, their goal didn't actually line up with their spending. So one woman was like, I really want to own a house. And she drove a BMW and she lived in downtown DC and she spent all of her money at Nordstrom. And it's like, well, you don't really want to own a home because you're doing all these other things. If you didn't do those, you'd own a home, right?
Right.
And, like it's sometimes hard to see that. And it's like, well, you can't have all of it right now. And so if that's your number one goal, let's get you to it. And we did. And it was kind of amazing because, I sat with many people that were, I'm a lawyer and I have all this student loan debt and I hate being a lawyer. And so it was like, okay, well, let's get your student loan paid off and then you can go, do whatever you want in life. You don't need to be a lawyer for the rest of your life to have this hanging over your head. You do if you start to live a lawyer lifestyle.
Mhm.
And so I think just having those conversations. The other thing that we spend a lot of time with is couples. And, couples don't really talk about their finances. I have lots of friends who have woken up one day to decide to get divorced and don't have a credit score, don't have
Mm.
access to the funds, don't have any of these things. And these are very successful breadwinners who just were like, I had no time to pay attention to it. So I think anybody that is not paying attention to their money, it really shouldn't. It's you should really have a good hard conversation. Like lay
Yeah.
those bills out, look at it one day. My friend is a financial influencer, Mrs. Dow Jones. She's like, make a money date with yourself, like lay it all
Mm.
out.
Cute.
It doesn't have to be tough. It can be a notebook where you just write down, okay, here's my rough expenses, here's what it is. I do check my apps probably every other day on like what's happening in my Schwab account, what's happening on my Amex card.
Mhm.
Don't
My
look
mother,
today.
yeah, my mother-in-law was someone got into her account and for 3 months they charged money on her credit card and took a little bit of money out of her account till it was all gone. I'm like,
Wow.
you didn't check your balance?
Yeah.
So
Totally. But I think like generally the way in which you and Jimmy are both describing this financial plan is so important because I think the barrier for so many people is like how you described your experience with Morgan Stanley, where you just see a bunch of numbers that you're like, I have no emotional connection to this. Like I understand that returns are good, but I don't understand what this means for my life beyond that. So I just really appreciate and love the simplicity of the language that you're using to describe this because it's like, yeah, when you put it all out on paper, it's so clear and it's so helpful to be able to translate that into what does this mean for my life?
yeah, no, it's great. It's a very important. And I think if you could do it before you're 25, by the time you're 50, you're going to be
Ugh,
in awesome shape.
you're so ahead of the game.
You're
Okay,
so ahead of the game. It doesn't even need to be hard. You could just be like, my dad was like, put money in your 401k. And I like,
yeah,
you wake up and you're like, wow, okay, 401k. Where did I get that free money from? That's amazing.
yes, yes. Okay, another thing I really want to make sure we talk about is your work with the Female Quotient.
Yeah.
I am a huge fan. I follow them on every single social media platform that I have. Can you tell us a little bit about your role as their strategic advisor and what you're focused on this year with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Female Quotient started off 10 years ago as something called the Girls Lounge.
Oh, I
The
love that.
founder had sold a company to Ipsos. She was a market researcher. And she said, look, I used to go to CES and there were no women there and nowhere for the women to meet. So she, in a celebratory way, on her first trip back there, post selling her company, she set up a suite for people to get their hair and makeup done and have a glass of champagne and just exchange, notes as they're coming and going at the show. And then every year she had to get a bigger suite. And then she got a space. And then she started to have people talk at it. And then when COVID happened, they pivoted to online, they pivoted to social.
Yes.
And they have 6 million followers on social. It is the place to be at all of the major trade shows. So Davos, South by Southwest, CES, Impossible Advertising Week. They're at Mobile World Congress today. And they set up a lounge, and the lounge is open to everybody. Everybody is welcome. And you don't have to have a badge for the trade show to get in, because there's lots of people that come to trade shows that don't have badges and need a place to go. My favorite one was at Davos one year. A woman came to the FQ Lounge and she was like, hey, yeah, my husband is in the Congress, but I don't have anywhere to go. Turns out she was the CEO of Planned Parenthood. And so
Wow.
she ended up hanging out in the lounge. And, people like Jamie Dimon stop in at the lounge at Davos and give a talk. There's, male and females there. And we really just focus on like the business of equality and how to connect. And we believe that everybody should have access and everybody should be able to be welcome everywhere. And then we put a lot of experts on the stage. There's a lot of women that their first speaking or most meaningful speaking engagement was on that stage that led to career change. So Meredith, the CEO of the New York Times, credits the FQ with helping her
Wow.
advance her career. There's lots of folks that have done that. And so we look at it as a really sort of a starting place and a place for people to sort of advance in their careers. We work with about 140 companies, everybody from Deloitte to, Shark Ninja to Ferragamo, and
Amazing.
have sponsors in the lounge and activations in the lounge. But it's really a place for gathering. When you go to a trade show and you have to go into someone's booth and see a demo, you're like, oh, it's a little cringe. But here you go and you like hang out, and you're like, oh, there's people
Yeah.
talking, there's always a speaker, there's always something cool going on. And so it's a force of a business. What I'm doing with them strategically is helping them really become a media business and package up their assets on social, create some original content, and just keep pushing forward the mission of equality and women in leadership.
Yes.
So I've attended a few of their online events following your encouragement, and I will say this: it's amazing how engaged everybody is. Whether it's a video on LinkedIn that's broadcasted live, the thoughtfulness of the engagement really blew me away.
Yeah.
And listening to you talk about the CEO of the New York Times and just the ethos that is behind it, as well as some of the responses that you made to the question previously. If our listeners haven't figured it out now, it seems like you are pretty focused on not just doing good and putting your mind and your muscle to businesses that you believe in, but you're also giving a lot back to those who might ask for it. You and I have probably had, 8 cell phone calls over the past 2 years, and every single one of them I walked away with a lesson from you, and I don't even know if you knew you were doing it. Maybe you did, and you're like,
No, I hope not.
this idiot needs to hear the following.
Yeah.
But talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that I've always tried to work with companies where the mission is to do something positive. I advise a venture fund called Obvious Ventures, which is World Positive Fund. And I'm not like Pollyanna or, to use the canceled word woke about it. I'm more along the lines of, look, if you're doing good work, it's good business. And so, SoFi was really about helping people get through a stage of student loan debt and get out to the other side to realize their ambition. And, they still talk about helping people realize their ambition. Pinterest was about, hey, the world could be a better place if we were all a little bit more creative. And if you thought about your future in a little bit more positive way. Honey was about making money fair instead of all the ad dollars going to Google, that we would actually disintermediate that and give you back some of the reward from that piece of it. And so the FQ is no different than that. It's really about, hey, look, women are good for business. They control a lot of spend, a lot of decision making, and a lot of power. And, I don't think in business, work, and consumer, there's really a place for them to be and to convene. We consider it to be a little bit of the golf course of business in that sense, and that we've created this sort of environment where everybody can get on and play, and no matter what level you're at. And even with domain, like domain is really around the idea of, hey, look, you don't have to be Goldman Sachs worthy to have a financial plan, that you should be able to have one as, as a 22-year-old starting out, or a millionaire, billionaire. Why should the service level be different? Because what you're doing is really pretty much the same, between 200,000 and $20 million. It's not that much different. I've seen hundreds and thousands of people's financial profiles, and they all have the same questions. How do I do this? What do I do about it? So, I really sort of try to focus on those kinds of companies. Like, you don't see me, selling lotions and potions, or, fast fashion, or any of those kinds of things. Like, I'm pretty picky about what I'll work on, because I really wanted to have scale and then also have impact. And so that's how I think about it. And it's just sort of natural selection in my mind.
I love that thread of how all these different companies like even the playing field in different ways for all of us. And especially just how you described the FQ Lounge, and how you could have the CEO of Planned Parenthood in the room and not even totally know it.
Yep.
Speaking of FQ social content, which I love hearing that you're involved in, the social is amazing. I saw something just the other day that was like, over 2/3 of women receive critical feedback in leadership roles versus 2% of men.
Yeah.
So, with that statistic in mind, if there is an acorn of wisdom that you would want to share with other women or people in the industry at large, what would it be?
Well, let's give Jimmy some feedback right now. No, I'm just kidding.
Bring it.
He can handle it. I trust him.
No, it's not easy to do. But what I try to do is, take my swings when I can, right? Where you feel confident in asking a question or giving some feedback in a situation, because I don't think most of us are very comfortable with it, and really practicing how you would say that to people. And as women, I think that it's really important. Jimmy and I have had a few conversations about this. It's like how you deliver the message to people and how you get your opinion across. And, it does take some rehearsal, and you shouldn't do it in a moment. And you should think
Hmm.
about why you're giving that feedback, but you should give it. And look, a lot of times, you have the feedback, but you actually don't give it. So I just encourage women to give that feedback and to
Yes.
try to package it in a way where it can be heard. Um, so, I try to live by that, and it gets a little bit more, you get a little more comfortable, and it gets a little easier as you do it. And you realize that, wow, when you actually do that, it has impact. And I have a pretty simple rule that I work by. If one person tells me something, it might just be a complaint. If two people tell me something, it is probably something I should think about. And if three people tell me the same thing that is broken or opinion, then I really need to go do some investigation into it and try to fix it. And so I really push through that piece of it. And it sort of served me well.
Yeah.
And I work with a lot of companies that, I have one company that I work with where the CEO goes through the Reddit comments, and she finds all sorts of crazy things to fix in the company. Like, she spotted something the other day that I was like, holy moly, if she hadn't been in there doing that and seen two or three
Yeah.
talking about it, and she caught something pretty significant very early on.
That's awesome. Yeah, doing
It's
that
so cool.
audit of the Reddit feedback, I'm sure is enlightening and also probably has
Yeah,
some amazing nuggets of wisdom in there.
right.
Yeah.
Some Reddit. Mhm.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that advice. I'm certainly taking notes. We're going to move us into our play segment, which is sort of rapid fire.
Great.
First question, I'm thinking about, so usually we ask, what would you do if you weren't in the industry you're currently in? But when thinking about you and your career, all the layers you've had, I am so curious what young Joanne Bradford wanted to be when she grew up. Like, did you have a dream aspiration? Did you think your career would be what it is today? Like, who were you then?
I wanted to be a lobbyist.
Really?
Yes, I read about being a lobbyist in one of those like grocery store encyclopedias that, you used to do your homework from before the internet. I was like, I want to be a lobbyist. I want to go convince people to like do what I want them to do.
I love this.
Because it sounded easier than being a lawyer. And I was like, I'll never get through law school. So that's what I wanted to do.
Wow.
in
Well,
in DC on K Street, or you didn't know then?
I didn't know then. I was just like, wow, it sounded cool to go like convince people to do what you wanted them to do.
love
Very
that.
cool.
What is your favorite thing to do for fun?
Oh, I have two things that I really like to do. One is I chase luxury secondhand goods.
I love this.
And my latest get was a blue 2006 Swift Jean Paul Gaultier Birkin bag that I advise a company called What Goes Around Comes Around, that is like the most iconic vintage reseller. Like, they sell to Rihanna and
I mean, a
uh,
Birkin bag is a hell of a get.
yeah. And so I barter with them. I give them time and I get store credit. So that was my latest get. Super exciting. Super exciting.
Are you a Sex and the City fan?
Yeah. Yeah. I like Emily in Paris. I like all that. I don't even know if I'll ever use the bag, but it's like I became obsessed with the idea of like, I got to get it. I got to get it.
Yes. Well, there's an
Um,
iconic episode where Samantha has a similar
yeah.
experience with a Birkin bag. It just reminded me of that.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good investment. Um, so that is that. I like to travel. I have two adult children, and I try to take a vacation with each of them individually and my husband individually,
Oh,
and then all together. So this year we're going to Japan to chase some vintage.
amazing. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah,
And some good sushi, I hope.
excellent sushi. All of it, all of it, all of it, all of it.
Yes. All right. Well, for the end of our show, we always close out with a moment of gratitude and just give you the opportunity to give a shout out to someone you admire. Could be someone in your family, someone on your team, someone completely random. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, not to be too self-serving in this, I think that the Street Cred team just does a great job. I found you guys through thewealth.com folks, and I think you guys set a really high standard. You're really amazing and humble and have a lot of humility in your work. And I don't think that most communication firms have that approach. And so it's been really great. And I'm really just grateful to work with you guys. And I'm grateful that Jimmy gives you the opportunity to do this.
Me too. Thank you so
She's the rock
much.
star. She's the rock star of Press Play, and thank you so much for that. Elena, on all future notes, let's also suggest that we are everyone's moment of gratitude because I loved the way that
I was
sounded.
going to say, not an ad. This is not an ad either.
Yeah, jokes aside,
Yeah.
Joanne, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming on with us
Of
and
course.
telling us your story. I know that we only scratched the surface of it, but
Seriously.
having you here means the world to us. Thank you for the time and thank you for your partnership.
Yeah, and I'll see you in Miami at Future Proof. Woo!
That's right.
Woo!
Can't wait.
All
Love
right.
it. Well, to our listeners, we know that you learned something new and enjoyed hearing Joanne's story. Thank you so much for being on the show. And to everyone who listened in today, be sure to write us via email at pressplay@streetcredpr.com to tell us what you think, ask us any questions, suggest any guests, or even just to tell us what you had for lunch today. I will say, not a single person has done this yet. I want to know what y'all are eating for lunch. Please email me. Thanks
Right.
again for tuning in, and we cannot wait to introduce you to our next guest. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.